well as think about the people that you enjoy working with. Because I think when you enjoy working with a client, you also do your best work, right? Like you show up the best that you can, and you feel like the relationship that you're developing with this client, that there's actual work being done here.
This episode is sponsored by TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. Be sure and check them out, and be sure and use the promo code Gordon, Gordon, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. Over 15 years ago, when I started my private practice, I had to learn a lot, and most of it the hard way, and I don't think you need to do the same. Hi, I'm Gordon Brewer, a licensed psychotherapist, and welcome to the Practice of Therapy podcast, part of the Psychcraft network of podcasts. Join me in this journey of discovery as we have conversations with other leaders and professionals in both the mental and allied health fields. Join us as we explore both the business and clinical sides of running a private practice. Welcome to the podcast. This is episode number 335 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. I'm Gordon Brewer, and glad you've joined me for this journey, and glad you're listening to the podcast. And if this is your first time listening in, welcome, and hope you'll come back for more and take time to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcast, whether it's on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other number of places. But anyway, glad you're with us and looking forward to you hearing my conversation with Dyna Tucker. Dyna is a therapist up in New York State, and we had just a great conversation. And what I love about having conversations with people like Dyna is it really helps, for me at least, gives me kind of a boost and help me feel good about the work that we do as therapists. And Dyna takes us through her journey as a therapist and starting a private practice. Like a lot of us in private practice, she started out in agency work and made the transition over into private practice. So we talk a little bit about that, along with just how she got into working with couples. And I think in different parts of the country, couples therapy, I think for a lot of people sounds intimidating, or they feel intimidated by it. But I do a lot of work with couples and I really enjoy it. And I think if you learn about it and learn, as I think I mentioned in this episode, being able to think systemically about your work, it makes a big difference. And I think it can be very rewarding. And certainly there are any number of people out there that are looking for couples therapists. I know when I first went into private practice, one of the things that helped me grow my practice pretty quickly was the fact that I identified as a couples therapist. And that's a specific niche. And in my particular area, there weren't many people that were doing couples work. Most of the therapists focused on the individuals. So something to think about, and hopefully listening to Dyna here in this episode will give you give you a little boost. And so anyway, glad you're here. But before we get to my conversation with Dyna, one of the things that I'd love to invite you to do is go over to practiceoftherapy.com/practice collaborative. And if you don't know about it yet, one of the things that I've done this year is started a new mastermind or community called the Practice of Therapy Collaborative. And with this, we meet once a week and have conversations about our practices. It's a mastermind kind of format, but also I do some teaching and have some guest consultants on. And also we leave space for doing work. We have one particular one particular Thursday of the month, we do a work day. And so that way we hold ourselves accountable for the things that we're doing. So anyway, I'd love for you to check it out. The doors are currently open. And if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/practice collaborative, and use the promo code just simply summer24 before June 29th, you can get $15 off your monthly membership. So it's a pretty good deal if you jump in now and take advantage of that. And also, if you want to see if this is a good fit for you or not, feel free to reach out to me at gordon@practiceoftherapy.com. That's my email, and we can talk about that. Also, we can set up a quick brainstorming session, and you can do that. But if you'll go into that webpage, practiceoftherapy.com/practice collaborative, and there'll be links here in the show notes, you can find out more about that, and love to have you join us. And also, before we get to my conversation with Dyna, love for you to find out more about Mental Health Wear TN, or Mental Health Wear Tennessee. This is a collaboration I did with a good friend of mine named Ashley, and she has set up an online store that sells all sorts of print-on-demand T-shirts, and there is also office swag, all of that sort of thing that can be customized, but it's geared towards the mental health space. So if you're looking for T-shirts to inspire people for their mental health journey or recovery journey. And also there's some professional designs there. So if you're looking for that perfect LCSW t-shirt or LMFT t-shirt or LPC t-shirt or whatever your profession is, she's got them there. And so I'd love for you to go over and check it out. And when you go over to the website, just mentalhealthweartn.com, you can also sign up to get a discount just by signing up to get the email, join the email list, and she'll be sending out emails just to make you aware of different new items and all of that sort of thing. And also you can get a gratitude journal template that you can share. So anyway, be sure and check it out, mentalhealthweartn.com, and love for you to support her in this work. And real quickly, before we get to my conversation with Dyna, I'd love for you to hear from one of the members of the Psychcraft Network and their podcast, along with some words from our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes.
Hey there. I'm Chris McDonald, and if you don't know me yet, I'm host of the Holistic Counseling Podcast, which is for therapists who want to deepen their knowledge of holistic modalities and build their practice with confidence. The Holistic Counseling Podcast is proudly part of the Psychcraft Podcast Network, a network of podcasts focused on helping people live more meaningful and productive lives. Join me each week as we explore the best practices for integrating holistic approaches into therapy and delve into the many benefits. Whether you're looking for new techniques or seeking to deepen your own personal journey towards wellness, this podcast is the perfect companion for your holistic path. If you haven't listened yet, you can find it over at holisticcounselingpodcast.com and discover other resources, including products, books, and other trainings to help support you in your holistic journey.
Ready to upgrade your practice from a rusty bicycle to a shiny new sports car? Buckle up, because TherapyNotes is here to turbocharge your journey. It's the comprehensive practice management system you've been craving, equipped with everything you need to navigate patient records, schedule seamlessly, host remote sessions, craft detailed notes, and tackle insurance billing with ease. And guess what? It's your trusty sidekick, available whenever and wherever duty calls. Picture having more quality time with your clients, all thanks to this digital assistant that never clocks out. Here's the kicker. It's Gordon approved, so you can trust it's the real deal. Bid farewell to paperwork headaches and embrace a new era of efficiency and top-tier care. Ready to level up your private practice game? Swing by practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and punch in promo code GORDON for 2 months on the house. Enjoy the show.
hello, everyone, and welcome again to the podcast. And I'm happy for you. I'm really happy for you to get to know Dyna Tucker. Welcome, Dyna.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
I love hearing people's stories and how they've gone into private practice and what that journey's been like. And that's going to be basically what we're going to talk about today. But maybe a good starting place, Dyna, is tell folks a little more about yourself. And as I like to say, how you've landed where you've landed.
Sure. So I am a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field of social work for probably over 13 years, nearing 14 years, in all various areas of social work. So I worked in foster care. I worked in criminal justice for a while, working with different alternatives to incarceration programs. Also worked for the city doing trainings on mental health and all the things that affect students and parents and how that affects how students show up in the classroom. And around, I would say 2018, 2017, end of 2017, 2018, started to venture into private practice. I kind of was, working for myself on the side a little bit and also working for a private practice while I was working for the city. And so kind of doing both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And as my own practice started to grow, had to kind of make the decision of like, okay, what are we doing, right? Are we going to go full force with this, or are we going to kind of stick this to the side hustle? And I decided to take the leap. So in 2020, in January, after kind of talking to my husband and like, okay, are we going to do this? Decided to take the jump into full-time private practice and quit my job with the city at the beginning of March 2020. Then 2 weeks later, the pandemic hit. And so,
I was just
um,
thinking that as you were telling that story. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
literally 2 weeks later, the pandemic hit. And so there was a whole lot of uncertainty already, kind of going full time into private practice. There were a lot of fears of like not having a steady paycheck and your pay being directly to your work, right? If you don't work, you don't get paid. So there was a lot of fear there. And so I kind of decided I jumped right into it. I had my clients that I had from, before. And the pandemic, as we all know, really pushed mental health into the forefront, right? And so we saw a lot of people become affected, and not just individuals. What also happened a lot where relationships were struggling, right? And as a couples therapist by specialty, I started to get a lot more referrals, right? For married couples and, just couples in general who were really struggling with this time. So by the end of 2020, with all of the kind of referrals that I had, which most of my referrals were word of mouth, right? Just clients that I had who then referred me to others who referred me to others. I started to, build a little bit of a wait list. And so in 2021, I decided to expand and brought on 2 associate clinicians. And that was kind of the beginning of, Tucker Group. And so I brought on those 2 clinicians, and towards the ending of 2021, another colleague of mine who had also taken the jump, we decided to get an office space together once things started to kind of lift, right? And the world started to go back, and we started to see more people wanting in person, right? So we decided to get an office space. And that was 2021. So now we are, 3 years later? And I have about 12 to 13 clinicians, a mixture of of social workers, mental health counselors, marriage and family therapists, as well as interns ranging from all 3 disciplines as well. So it's been quite the journey.
Yeah. I love that. And yeah, as you were telling about that, it reminds me a lot of kind of how I got into private practice too. I was working for an agency and working in foster care and all of that kind of fun stuff. And then started doing kind of some work on the side, so to speak, doing private practice work. And I think, I think for people out there that might be considering private practice, I think that is a good way to maybe move your way into it. And I think the fact that you had a client base going right into the pandemic probably saved you a good bit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The clients that I had, as I said, I had already made the decision to go full-time private practice because
Mm-hmm.
of, the client base that I had. And so the pandemic kind of going into that only increased, right? Like,
Right.
we were only able to grow from there. And I 100% agree with you. I tell anybody who's going into private practice, start off small, right? Have your full-time job, start off small, grow and plan. Most importantly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Plan
Mm-hmm.
financially. If you have a partner, like you have to have that conversation because it can be a very big financial adjustment. And so
Yeah.
with planning, you try to minimize that as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. I totally agree. And I'm curious, how did you end up making that decision whether to leave the agency work and that sort of thing and move into private practice? Because I know, at least if I can remember way back when I did that, that was a scary proposition to think about leaving a steady job with a salary and all that kind of stuff, and then, moving into being a business owner.
Yeah, it was extremely scary.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely scary, but you know, the private practice work that I was doing on the side was growing so much that like I had to make a decision, right? I had to either go full force with it and take the chance or cut it back and, maintain my full-time job. It became too much juggling both, doing my full-time job, doing private practice on the side, still working for a private practice, on its own. And then, I'm a mom of two, right? I'm a wife. So, like, doing all of those things, it just became
Mm-hmm.
too much. And I had to kind of make the decision of like, well, what are my long-term goals? Is this something that I want to do long term? And if it's now or never.
Right. How did you kind of prepare yourself financially for it as you moved into that?
Yeah. So one of the main things that I did was I started saving, right? Saving as much as I can to kind of have a little bit of a nest egg. And I want to say that I definitely think the pandemic helped a lot with things going fully virtual because that really cut back on expenses, right? Because at the time I was paying for an office space, and then once the pandemic happened, everything being virtual, it really, kind of took away, like, really the only thing that I'm paying for is an EHR at this point and a telehealth platform, right? So that kind of helped a lot. But really trying to save, put aside as much money, making sure that I have enough to cover my monthly expenses, and then figuring out financially, looking at my caseload and figuring out, okay, what number do I have to hit weekly in order to supplement the income that I was getting before. Right. And
Right.
I think that's probably the most important kind of financial groundwork that I think a lot of times people may go into private practice, but they don't work out the numbers. Right. And then so you don't know what's your bottom line. You don't know what number you have to hit. How many sessions do you have to hit weekly in order to make your monthly expenses? Right. And then
Yes.
checking back on that every week, like at the end of the week, having that running tally of, okay, this is where I'm at. This is what I need to hit by the end of the month.
Yes. Yes. That is so smart because as you describe it, that was kind of my same process. And of course, I'm a dinosaur in this whole industry now, but back I remember that of just really figuring out, okay, what do I need in order to replace my salary for what the job I was in, also pay the taxes, pay the overhead, all of that, and you add all that up, and then you look at, okay, divide that by the number of sessions that I anticipate having per week and what I can charge for them and all of that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
always call that kind of working backwards,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of figuring out the numbers, but that you were so smart to do it that way. And I would add too, Dinah, and it sounds like you probably did this too. I know when I started thinking about making that transition from kind of part-time private practice into full-time private practice, one of the things I did is I set a date at which I was going to do that. And I made it like I was, I put it a year out. And I took every bit of money, or pretty much every bit of money that I was making in my private practice, and stuck it away in a savings account. And that was going to be my nest egg or my buffer for when I
Mm-hmm.
started practice. And so I knew that I had enough money there to where I could go 6 months if I had to without seeing a single client and have enough money to
Mm-hmm.
survive. And so that, I don't know if you did something similar for that as
Yes.
well.
So yeah, definitely this, like I said, this was a long process in terms of making the decision to go full time. Once I started to see that, okay, this is not what I'm doing right now is not sustainable. And we gotta, we have to figure out where we're going with this. The preparation started, right? The
Mm-hmm.
saving started of making sure that this is the goal. So the goal is going to be by March of 2020. So then we need to be able to prepare as much as we can in that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was such a wise move on your part. So, and I know that you, as we were chatting about before we started recording, one of the things that you're starting to get, you like me, same thing that happened to me, is started having a lot of people asking you about how to go into private practice. They saw that you were doing it and being successful. And so tell us a little more about what you do with people around all of that. And
Yeah. So when I'm working with clients, coaching clients, right, who are working on either starting their own practice or growing their practice or even kind of rebranding a practice that they already have, right? It's very individualized. It's very much based off of what are their needs at that time. And so that's one of the first things that I talk to them about is what are your needs, right? Like what do you hope to do?
Mhm,
And then kind of looking at where they are in the process, right?
mhm,
So, for example, I'm currently working with a coaching client who right now she already had a private practice set up, right? But it wasn't really branded, wasn't really, niched. Like she was just kind of like doing it because she had been doing it for a very long time but was looking to kind of market herself more, right? And so a lot of the work that I did with her at the very beginning was figuring out who is her client base, right?
mhm,
Like who, if we're going to market you, we have to then market you to the people that you want, that the clients that you want, right? And
mhm,
so a lot of the work that we start there is thinking about things like who are the clients that you enjoy working with? Who are the clients you don't enjoy working with? Right. If you can think about, your success stories with clients, who were those clients? What did they look like? Demographics, gender, age range, profession, the issues that they were coming with. What were all of those things, right? And that's how
mhm.
we then figure out who are the clients that you want. And so we can start to develop language that will attract those clients, right?
Right.
My biggest thing in private practice, especially with the clinicians that I work with and with my interns, I wholeheartedly believe that private practice should be enjoyable, right? Like,
Mhm,
and I've done so much mandated counseling in my time, right? That I did
yeah.
not want private practice to be another space where I don't feel like I'm working with the clients that I'm being my best therapist self.
Yes.
That's where we start first because you want to attract those clients because you want to enjoy the work that you're doing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's something that a theme that people hear all the time on this podcast is that the importance of finding a niche and finding something that brings meaning to you, number one, and that you enjoy those people. Because I think the fear is for a lot of people is that you've got to cast a wide net to get all these clients. But the truth of the matter is when somebody's looking for a therapist, they're looking for a therapist that they know can help them with a specific issue. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the reason for niching and that sort of thing. So yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And a lot of times people come to me and they don't know what their niche is, right?
Hmm.
And so that's how we get into those conversations of like, well, let's think about the people that you enjoy working with. Because I think when you enjoy working with a client, you also do your best work, right? Like you show up the best that you can, and you feel like the relationship that you're developing with this client, that there is actual work being done here,
Right.
right? As opposed to like I said, a lot of the work that I have done, which is like, mandated therapy, and you got to like get people to buy in before the work can really begin,
Hmm.
that's a lot. And you don't want
Hmm.
private practice to be that. So really finding your identity as a clinician and finding what your niche is a lot of the original work. And then once we have the wording, right, of like
Hmm.
people that you want to work with and being able to attract those people, then we start with the marketing, right? Then you got to, you need headshots. You want to look at, okay, are there listings and directories for the type of clients that you're looking for, right?
Hmm.
And the type of clinician that you are, right? So, for example, I'm a clinician of color. And so I am on, directories for clinicians of color, right?
Right.
And
Hmm.
you have to be able to find, the different avenues that are already there created for you to market yourself.
Right. Right. Yeah, I always think of marketing is that you go to the places where you know your ideal clients are going,
Hmm.
and then you just simply communicate to them how you can help them.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be salesy or convincing, or in that sense, that just because the people are out there that are looking for help, and it's just a matter of making sure they can find you.
Absolutely. There
Yeah.
are enough people in this world for every single clinician that is out there to fill their
Yes.
caseload, right?
Yes.
The
That's
world is
right.
vast, right?
That's
Like
right.
the world is, and so that is very important. And I love what you said about not, it doesn't have to be salesy, because I'm super against that, right? Like
Hmm.
I don't want
Hmm.
to convince you to work with me, right? I want
Hmm.
you to feel like, that what I'm saying is connecting with you and you feel like this is going to be a good experience.
Right. Right. Well, a couple of the things I was curious about, Dinah, was number one, you work primarily with couples, I think you said,
Hmm.
and I do a lot of couples work as well. I'm an MFT, so that's kind
Right.
of well, kind of a little bit my training now. But what was it that drew you to working with couples versus doing solo? I mean, working with individuals more. And I know you work with individuals as well,
Yeah.
but hmm.
Yeah, so I started my work with couples around, I want to say 2015, 2016, right?
Hmm.
2016. I started my work with couples, and I was working at a private practice at the time. And I just really found that I was drawn to one, individuals who were coming in with relationship type issues, right?
Hmm.
And realizing as I was working with the individuals who are in therapy that if you still have a partner, that we're only doing half the work here, right?
Right,
Because
right.
you're only one half of the relationship. And so as I started to get more couples clients, really found that I was enjoying it. So I kind of went back and did an advanced certificate in marriage and family therapy with a couple specialization, and really loved the coursework, right? Because I was like, okay,
Hmm.
well, if I'm gonna do this, I want to go back and get like the formal training for it. And so that kind of started my journey into couples work, and I just really found that I really enjoyed it. Couples work, as I have heard often, is very polarizing. People either love it or they hate it.
Right.
And when it comes to the clinicians at my practice, I kind of tell them at one point or another, you are going to work with a couple, right? Um,
Hmm.
and then, once you get over the fear of having two people in the room as opposed to
Hmm.
one, then you can kind of sort of decide whether you like it or not, right?
Right.
I provide a lot of guidance, but one of the things that I really impart to my clinicians is that I want you to leave my practice being able to work with any population, right?
Hmm.
Being able to work with whomever, but also knowing who your population is.
Right. Right. Very valid point. And it's, yeah, I would concur, with what you said earlier about there's, working with individuals, there's always the other, because if you think about it, the majority of the issues that people are having in their lives involve other people. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah. And so that's, it's what brings them to therapy, and that they're just having trouble relating to others. And so I think that's, yeah. Of course,
Yeah.
that's my systemic nature too, of just way of thinking about, couples work and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you're working with the individual, there's only but so much work that we can do, right?
Hmm.
Without bringing in the other half of the relationship, right?
Right.
And while I absolutely believe that doing your own individual work is paramount, right? Because it
Hmm.
oftentimes, even in couples work, sometimes the couples work can't continue until the individuals get their own individual
Right.
therapy,
Right.
right?
You're
And
right. Yeah.
oftentimes what I recommend and what happens a lot at my practice is, one clinician will be seeing the couple, and then each individual in the couple might be seeing, a different clinician. And that's so that like we can kind of be hitting it at all points so that people are able to work on their individual stuff so that they can show up in couples therapy for the couple stuff.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's to me, I didn't mean for us to get too far down a rabbit trail talking about
Yeah.
specifically about couples therapy, but you're exactly right. And I think, people out there listening, you know, I think people are intimidated by couples work, but when you really kind of, like you said, get the training for it and understand how working with couples is different than working with individuals. But at least for me, once you kind of understand being able to kind of think systemically about things and think about the process of what's going on, not the content of what's going on, it makes it much easier. And I love working with couples for
Hmm.
that reason. Yeah, just kind of
Absolutely.
looking at that. Well, one other quick question here, Dana, before we kind of close out. I know you said you started kind of solo, and then you added more people. What sort of structure do you have within your practice now? In other words, are you using contractors or employees, and or how did you make those decisions? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's very interesting, and that's a very good question. I think one of the things that I also love to do is provide supervision, right? Supervision is one
Hmm.
of my loves. I love working with clinicians on helping them just kind of grow into like who they are as a clinician, and just helping them kind of put theory to practice, right? And what
Right.
that looks like,
Hmm.
learning the stuff at school, but what it looks like in the room with an actual client. And so the first two clinicians that added on were associate therapists, right? So they were LMSWs, pre-licensed, I guess
Hmm.
pre-licensed to the C. And so most of my clinicians are either limited permit MHCs or MFTs or LMSWs. And then I also have interns. And so I kind of decided to go that route mainly because, like I said, I really enjoy supervision.
Hmm.
And, you know, for me, which they are like W-2 employees because I provide that supervision as opposed to contractors. And that's mainly because I wanted to have a little bit more structure on like what's happening in the practice. When you have contractors, there's kind of like a lot of stuff that you have to be
Right.
hands off about, and that just didn't feel comfortable for me as a new practice owner at the time.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
those are all I know that's a whole other show, just thinking about, just whether to go W-2s or contractors and that sort of thing. In fact, I probably need to do another episode on that, because that question comes up a lot when people are moving into group work. And I think, yeah, just looking at, just thinking about compensation and all of that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and how you pay them and all that sort of thing. How did you land on a method for that for your practice?
Yeah.
Do you do like a fee split kind of thing, or a salary, or a flat
Yeah.
fee, or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have a flat fee, and compensation did play a big role into whether making the decision to go W-2 versus contractors. So a couple of things, right? And I always tell people when you're thinking about growing and you're thinking about, okay, do I do W-2? Do I do contractors? I think you have to contemplate where you're at in terms of the energy that you can give to another person, right? And if you're in a place where, maybe for you, you don't have the time to do the training, right? You don't have the time to do like the supervision, then maybe bringing on a contractor who can be a little bit more independent, right, might be better for you, right? But then you also have to think about compensation because you're going to pay a contractor a bit more than you're going to pay like a pre-licensed clinician, right?
Right.
So those are all of the things to consider. And as well as my practice takes insurance, right? As we know, insurance reimbursement rates are not that great. So that also factors into compensation, right? That puts a very big limit on what I can offer a clinician coming in just pretty much off the bat. And it kind of, for me, puts a ceiling on what I can pay a clinician because insurance rates are never going to increase, right? Well, I won't say never, but they very rarely increase. And when they do increase, it takes a minute, right?
Yeah, right. And that doesn't mean, and because my practice is an insurance-based practice, that doesn't mean that you can't have a lucrative and profitable practice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you just have to structure it. You have to structure it differently. There are more wheels and knobs to it, as I like to say, that you have to manage. But I think you have to look at the demographics of your area, the clients that you serve, and that sort of thing. And it's a trade-off, at least in my mind, of making the decision. With insurance-based practices, you don't have to spend a lot of time in marketing. There's a steady flow of clients from insurance, whereas cash-based practices have to put a lot of money into marketing the practice and educating people on the front end and that sort of thing. So it's a matter of, I guess, choose your poison. I guess. Yeah. So, well, Dana, I have to be respectful of your time, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And so tell folks how they can get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your coaching and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I am on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Tucker Group Practice or Prosper in Practice Coaching. You can also look up my website.com. That's the group practice website. Contact information is there as well. Yeah, those would probably be the best ways to reach me.
Okay, awesome. Well, Dana, I really enjoyed our conversation, and hopefully we can get you back on the show again. Well, again, a big thanks to Dyna for being on the podcast. One of the things I realized after I went back and listened to it, I didn't have the correct microphone on. And so the sound quality on my end was not as good as I like for it to be, but you could hear it okay. And hopefully it wasn't too distracting. But anyway, I really enjoyed getting to know Dyna and all that she is bringing to the table within our professions. And I think she has so much wisdom, and I think just a lot of things to think about. And in particular, just how you structure your practice and the importance of creating a niche. I mean, that's something that you hear a lot, and I think it's a good topic to revisit. And also just thinking about, in our conversation, just about making that transition from working for an agency or working for somebody else and going into your own private practice. She really did it the right way. And I think you can learn from that if you're thinking about making the move from public practice to private practice. I guess that's a good way to say it, or agency work or working for someone else to working for yourself. But be sure and check out Dyna's stuff. You'll find links in here in the show notes and the show summary to connect with her. She's a really smart person. And thanks again, Dyna, for being on the podcast. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, be sure and check out the Practice of Therapy Collaborative. And you can go to practiceoftherapy.com/ Practice Collaborative to find out how that might be of help to you in your own private practice journey. It's a membership community and mastermind, and we're meeting once a week, once a week, every month. And it is unlimited. And also, there is open enrollment right now. So be sure and take advantage of that and just use the promo code SUMMER24, and that will get you $15 off your monthly membership if you enroll before June 29th. So be sure and take advantage of that. And also, big thanks to our sponsor of the podcast, TherapyNotes. They are who I use in my practice, and like I've said before, they are couldn't work without them, and I really appreciate their support of this podcast. But I'm constantly impressed with their platform and all that they're doing to constantly improve it and make it so user friendly. And it is it's got everything that you need for running the clinical side of your practice, from billing to filing insurance claims to a telehealth platform and a client portal that's second to none. And plus their support is absolutely stellar. So be sure and check them out. Go to practiceoftherapy.com/therapynotes and be sure and use that promo code, just Gordon, GORDON, and you can try them out for 2 months for free. So be sure and check them out. Thanks again, folks, for joining me for the podcast. Do take time to follow us or subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. And I look forward to being back with you next week on the Practice of Therapy podcast. You've been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, part of the PsychCraft network of podcasts. You can find out more about the other great podcasts in the network by visiting psychcraftnetwork.com. And if you haven't done so already, please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com and get your free private practice startup guide, along with a lot of other great resources and webinars and free things just by visiting. Also, be sure to follow us wherever you might be listening to your podcasts. This podcast is intended to be educational in purpose and is not intended to give legal, accounting, or counseling advice. If you need a professional, find the right person for that.